You ready? Lauren. Sean, are we ready? Sorry. Yeah.
So much.
Everything. So we were recording it whether we want to tell us all whether it's how and whether we want to.
All of a sudden, I know. I was ready to like make it a suggestion. Just let that work it out. Let's put it out.
It's like a straightforward one, like there's a few more pages long. I've been like, oh, yes. But now it works. See?
Yeah. And you sprung into action.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I noted. It was
Happy to
noted.
serve. Okay, good to know.
Thank you.
Good to know.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
You want to keep the same name?
Sorry, what?
You want to keep your name or keep the name? Switch it.
We're on, but yes, sorry about that.
She may have her.
Good evening, my name is Anthony, I'm chair of the Committee on Finance. I'm calling to order a regular meeting on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024 at 5:33 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please call the meeting?
Chairwoman Anthony, present. Vice Chairman Taylor,
Yeah.
Councilor Enderle, present. Councilwoman Graves,
Present.
Councilor Sanchez is absent. Four present, one absent. You have a phone.
Thank you so much, and I'd like to recognize Pro Tem Pichardo, who is joining us this evening, as well as Councilman Vargas. It's nice to see you. Us. We also have Nettie Shaw from the City Solicitor's Office. We have Aaron Easter Gardner, our Director of Policy, and June Rose, our Chief of Staff. So thank you all. May I have a motion to waive the readings of for items 1 through 4?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And then for the purposes of this evening, we will be, do I need a motion to discuss them together or?
You don't have to make a motion.
Okay, all right. All right, then we will ask if we could please have Chief Hawkins comes to our tables back. Oh, you're welcome. And our Director of Finance, Sarah Silveria.
The great writing, I was wearing the plans of the testimony about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And please state your name and the title for the record.
I'm there. Gordon Hawkins, Chief Hawkins. Okay, and before we begin, I think we have a presentation that will be handed out. And I'll be asking that we mark this as exhibit number 1. Thank you. Thank you. The motion is made by Councilor Anderbaugh, seconded by Councilor Taylor. All in favor? All opposed? And this is entitled Mayor Smiley's proposed FY25 budget, April 23, 2024. Okay. So everyone has
Thank you.
a copy. All right. Courtney, or is it you or Tanner who would like to start? Start. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for me to just provide you with a framing for this budget at a high level, what you should expect to hear from department directors in their meetings as they come before you in the coming weeks. So with that, we will jump right in. Are we gonna put the presentation up there? Okay, thanks. So the budget before you, I think the thing that we are most proud of is that as we committed to last year, we've successfully weaned ourselves off one-time federal funding and are presenting a balanced budget for you. That means the new investments are really limited, but they're the things that we felt were most important to build on the foundation of the budget that we passed last year. So there's about an overall 3% increase in the total city budget. As it relates to revenue, we are not proposing any changes to any tax increases this year. We are hoping that we'll be able to implement a bifurcated tax rate, which means taking the city back to a owner-occupied and non-owner occupied rate, which it's had in the past, and which eliminates the homestead exemption. This doesn't change the amount of money anyone's paying in property tax, but provides for more transparency into people understanding how Providence's tax rate compares to other cities. So for example, if you're shopping for a house on Zillow, and you look at a listing, it shows you the tax rate. It doesn't explain that there's a homestead. And so someone who's looking or considering moving to Providence isn't going to understand that we actually have the 8th lowest rate in the state. So this, we believe, makes us more competitive as people think about where to buy a home, while also not changing or impacting people's tax rate in any way. This does require state enabling legislation, which has been introduced and heard at the State House already, and would allow for us to implement this change. No change to the commercial or tangible tax. The state pilot that's budgeted is what was in the governor's proposed budget, and the local pilot includes new agreements with the institutes of higher education that were negotiated last year, which included the significant increase associated with the MOA with Brown. It does not include any pilot payment for lifespan, although we are anticipating and hopeful that we will move those negotiations to a place that will be able to eventually include that in this budget. So as it relates to investments, I'm just going to go through at a high level 4 areas of investment that are consistent with how you've heard the mayor talk about the budget since he took office. So the first priority area that we look at is where we can make investments that improve the lives of children and families across the city. And the first investment there, and probably the largest in the entire budget increase, is an increase to Providence Public Schools of $3 million. As you know, that's the largest increase in 7 years. Previously, there was no increase last year. And so we felt that given the rising costs associated with everything, that it was important that the city do its part to try to support the district in providing quality education for their students. We have been able to mirror both the summer learning and summer jobs investments. Summer learning in particular is a partnership with the district where we provide money and the district provides money so students can have robust summer learning opportunities when they're not in school. And as a reminder, this Saturday is the summer learning Eat, Play, Learn event at PCTA, where families can come sign up for summer learning, recreation activities, and summer jobs.
What time is that? Sorry.
In the morning-ish, but I will cover. There's also all of the Little League opening days on that, so get ready for love. We've made a modest increase in recreation, although that department did add several key staff last year that were maintained. This increase is specific for programming, so things like the new soccer league that launched this year. This also includes funding so that we can bring back what we are now calling summer nights basketball until we come up with a better name. Formerly referred to as midnight basketball, this summer, but will allow for the recreation department to continue to add year-round programming. We've also increased our allocations to the community library of Providence and the public library, Providence Public Library. You will probably remember last year, Carol Space providing really compelling testimony about the need for an increase for the community libraries of Providence. So we're really thrilled to be able to provide that in our budget because of their work. Okay, as it relates to building a safer city and public safety, in the police budget, it obviously funds the full-time positions for the police officers that will finish their training this fall. That's a class of 36 officers that have been in an academy. It also provides for the same schedule that you all implemented through this budget last year, where we would have another new academy start next spring of 40 officers. It's important to note that when those officers are done training, we actually have a federal grant to pay for 20 of the 40. That grant requires that the city match. So in order to get funding for the 20, we have to do another 20, which would give you the total of the 40. It also in the fire department funds the 40 laterals that are currently in an academy, so they will become firefighters in this next budget. It also allows for funding for 10 additional laterals that would only be brought on in the instance that retirements occur and we need another full-time firefighter. Finally, it provides for the recruitment of an academy that would start in fiscal year 26. That would be a full academy, not a academy. In telecommunications, we've made a modest increase to add a quality assurance specialist to that team that will be listening to calls and providing training and support for call takers in telecommunications. And it increases funding to Family Service of Rhode Island for their GO team, which is a long-standing program that pairs social workers with police officers to support victims of crime. FSRI was going to experience a reduction in funding from other sources, and so we've added $100,000 to support that. As it relates to city service, we've made a few small changes here in addition to maintaining the funding that was added last year. So our focus in DPW has been in two areas. One is in sewer. This is the team who's out providing response during rainstorms, both in preparation and during the storm, and flood mitigation response, working for Dave Mambro. So this is another team of folks in Dave's unit for sewer. It also adds 2 staff in DPW engineering, both an assistant chief engineer and an engineering project manager. This is an area of need that I identified this year as I started to dig into all of the capital improvement work we've been doing. The city definitely does not have enough engineering and project management staff to be able to manage the amount of projects that we are implementing right now. So this provides a modest increase to that department to help them ensure that we finish spending the ARPA money and implement the first 2 years of the CIP that has been passed. And then finally, within the CIP budget, so this you won't see in the general revenue budget, we've added another landscape architect for the Parks Department, similarly to help them manage that 2-year bond money. And then the last area is around Best Friend City. So this is where we look at changes within our internal departments to make us more effective and efficient. We've made a big investment in municipal court to purchase a court case management system that will help improve service and operation in that court. That's something that was requested by the court administrator, who's doing a fantastic job in the municipal court and working closely with the administration. There's a restructure to the city's human resource department that better aligns people's functions and also adds 2 positions in our benefits administration and 1 position in talent acquisition. These are 2 big pain points for all city departments.
and an opportunity for us to really operate more efficiently, especially in the areas of benefits, because we're self-insured. If we're not tightly managing our benefits program, we are likely losing money. And so that team will be tasked with identifying areas where we can improve how we're doing that work. And then you'll see in the budget 2 reorganizations that we previously talked about, but were done through MOA in the last fiscal year and have been implemented through ordinance in this budget. One is through inspection standards, where Director Moore has realigned his people functionally. And the other is the merger of Healthy Communities with the CDBG Housing Department to become the newly coined Housing and Human Service Department. So you'll see that in your budget. And then finally, there's a modest investment in digitization. This is going to be something that you'll likely hear more about from me over time as we try to allocate other funding sources to this, but it is our desire to go digital on all city permits and records so that they can be available to the public online. Director Moore is going to start this process for us in GIS, and we're going to be looking for alternative funding sources to be able to expand it. They're also working on this in Vitals, and obviously in archives and the recorder of deeds. So I'm going to pause there, and Sarah and I are available for any broad questions. I would ask, department related questions. I'd really like department directors to have the chance to answer those. I'm happy to talk about strategy and approach and why we made the investments that we made, but everyone is preparing and working really hard to be able to present their budget to you. So if things get too in the weeds, I may ask you to wait for them.
Councilman Taylor, thank you.
What's going on with the master lease? I don't see that mentioned anywhere in there.
Master lease is being awarded at Board of Contracts. The next Board of Contracts meeting.
Still 20 million.
We're hoping to do, so we had originally planned for 10 million. We've gone back and asked for rebids. We are hoping to do 20 million, $10 million is public safety apparatus, which will likely take 2 or 3 years to be delivered, and then $10 million of other primarily utility apparatus like plows and trucks for parks that we can do.
Yes, please go right ahead.
How many positions are added in this budget? No, new positions.
Yeah, in total, it's in total, it's 13, but in general revenue, it's 9. So 4 of the 13 are funded either from capital improvement dollars or other sources.
Okay. And
Yes, go right ahead.
how are we covering? How's the city covering that ATV lawsuit for $11 million?
So we had, it settled last at the beginning of this fiscal year. It was expense to fiscal 23. So we've already recognized that expense. We had some of it put in our legal accrual, and the rest of it was paid through our claims line item in the law department.
Not all this year though, wasn't it? Spaced out a couple of years.
So the way that we have to report it through the audit is we have to recognize the entire expense the year that the judgment came through. So we have recognized that the amount of $11 million in the 23 budget, like the 23 year end.
And then the last question is the rainy day fund. Do we have any money in the rainy day fund?
Yeah, so we do. We have a rainy day savings account. It's got just over $14 million in that account. And then we also have a cumulative fund balance of 29 million.
The what? Sorry.
Our cumulative fund balance, like our excess of revenue over expenses over the lifetime of the city. So we have about 29 million in fund balance, and a $14.1 million savings account that we call rainy day, that we can't touch unless it's to make like a payroll or a debt service or something like that. We would otherwise be in the fall.
So just a quick question.
Yes.
Follow up on that. So let's say we don't get the tangible tax thing. We're talking about 5.7 million. Can we use either that 14 or 29 towards that?
No.
No.
We would have to make cuts other places or find other sources of replacement.
Right.
And just for clarification, would you talk about the, that 5.7 million intangible tax and what's going on with that?
Yes, so you will recall last year, the General Assembly passed a $50,000 tangible tax exemption for businesses, with an understanding that cities and towns would be reimbursed and made whole for the provision of that exemption, similar to what they did with motor vehicle tax. Since it's been implemented, we learned that there was something added to the legislation that provided that they calculated it by looking at year-over-year levy. So they subtract our levy last year from our levy this year, and that's the amount they're giving cities and towns, which is fine for cities and towns whose levy may have become smaller, but ours has in fact grown. And so it means that the value of the exemption we provided, which is about $5.7 million, is now not eligible for payment from the state. So Representative Slater introduced legislation to correct what we believe was an error. And they are actually there tonight hearing that legislation. The League of Cities and Towns did a survey and they got results from 29 cities and towns. And it's something like 17 lose money if this is carried out in this way, including Pawtucket, Cranston, and Warwick. So there's a lot of advocacy happening on this issue. And we will, you know, if we learn that we're not going to be successful, we'll need to go back to the budget to answer your question, Councilman.
Yeah, and I just hold on for 1 minute. Council. Hello, Council President. Thank you
Hello.
for joining us. And I see that you have a question.
I do, I actually just want to underline the importance of this. In any of our advocacy at the General Assembly, and so essentially like Providence is being punished and every other city is being punished for economic growth. I would assume unintentionally, and also like conversely, cities and towns that aren't doing any like redemption of the exemption are still getting money from the state if they didn't throw their receipts beyond last year's cap. So underline the importance of that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think
Last
Councilman Taylor has.
Last question is gonna follow up. You said there's a total of 13 new positions. But it's only 9?
Nine general revenue funding.
Okay, so how, do you know how much that is? The 9 would be?
Total value, I don't.
I don't know the dollar, I can get the dollar.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to know that. That's important. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, yes, Councilwoman Graves.
I just have a question on, what you had said, the rainy day fund, the 14 million. And the 29 million, is the 29 combined, is that them
It's
total combined?
They're kind of like different concepts. So the rainy day fund, I think that Councilman Taylor was talking about is a savings account.
Mhm.
It's just a savings account. The fund balance is a balance sheet item, so it's like, you have your assets, your liabilities, your equity, so our total equity is 29 million.
So 14 and the 29.
No, so the 14 up in the asset section, it's a little, technical, with accounting technical, but, they're just like different ways of.
So that, so
Yeah,
they're
they're not-
combined, it's not like we
they're not
got, they're not combined,
They're not
okay,
combined.
thanks.
Okay. I'm gonna come back to you, Councilwoman, but on the meantime, Councilwoman Amberlaw.
Excellent. Is it invited to you?
Of course it is.
Thank you for the presentation, both of you. And for some really great stuff in the budget. I have a few questions. I'll just go in order. In the overview page, what happens if the legislation doesn't pass for the bifurcated residential rate?
You would just leave the tax rates as they
As
are on that sheet.
Okay. And then the local pilot at 15.7 million, is this just the monetary pilot or are you lumping in all the in-kind contributions? as
Just the
well?
monetary pilot, but it's all of the pilot improvement.
Plus Brown, like the double Brown.
Plus, you know, the, not just the.
Oh, not just the
higher end.
oh. One more quick one. For the city's contribution to the public school, how was the 3 million chosen? Like, where did that number come from?
Basically, after going through all the budget and funding, you know, everything that we were funding, trying to determine how much of an increase we could afford.
Okay.
and kind of growing that increase as much as we could while still providing for the balanced budget.
Okay, and it doesn't impact like any of the ongoing, word mediation is probably not the right word, but the conversations that are happening.
No, it is
There's a
formal
mediation.
mediation, and it does not impact stuff.
Note that I'm excited about this already. Under building a safer city, I think you probably know the question I'm gonna ask, but do we have any increases for traffic safety and any additional support, like for the traffic safety office, like additional staff to help Nate out? Because we can't really police our way out of some of those safety concerns.
It does not make any changes to the traffic safety office.
Okay. And for the telecommunications, I didn't understand when you said they'll be like listening for quality assurance to whose calls are they listening to?
When people call, when, 911 or emergency calls are
Okay.
transferred to telecom for dispatch.
Oh,
Currently, there's no one responsible for monitoring the quality of those calls and providing for training.
okay. Have we gotten like negative feedback or is that a
It's
question?
just like a modern standard that most units doing this work include.
Okay. And then for the additional, this might be a question for Wendy later, but adding the additional CIP funded landscape architect to parks, does this offset the other decreases we've seen in the parks budget? It looks like there's like 100 or 200K decrease in the parks budget from last year.
You should save that for parks, but we didn't cut any positions out of parks, so we should dig into the reasons for the decrease, but this is additive.
Okay. I'm excited about the restructuring of human resources. That's my question, just comment.
Yeah.
And the last question builds on something Councilman Taylor was asking about the $11 million lawsuit. What did we need to, this might be a question for another time, but I'm gonna just ask it now. What did we need to shift? $11 million is quite large. Like what didn't we fund because of that? Like or did that eat into something else? Like that must have been much larger than we.
So we had some amount of it already approved because we knew this case was ongoing and we had it in our legal accrual. The balance of it was just paid out of, like general operations in fiscal 2023. So had we not had that expense, we might have had a small surplus for that year. So that expense is booked and recognized already.
Okay, it's a pretty large surplus. Okay.
But, will you just talk about how the legal accrual works?
Yeah, so at the end of every fiscal year, as we're going through our audit, part of that audit process is looking at all of our legal cases. So our law department will review every case that's outstanding. If it is known and likely to settle and measurable, we have to recognize it in that fiscal year that we're auditing. And so a number is provided to us from the law department and we recognize that full expense at that time. And then as those cases settle, it comes out of the legal accrual instead of out of the general fund.
When would we be seeing that budget? Like if that were, like, do we ever see that kind of accrual section of the budget to see like if this is an aberration of a year for having this great chunks
So
or?
it is in the audit, so it's a separate fund. It's the self-insurance fund, so if you're looking at our audit book, one of the funds is called the self-insurance fund, and you'll see that legal accrual, so you have to look at like year over year how it changed. And like the details of that are not public, of what makes it that amount.
I think that's it for right now.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. I have a couple, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Just going into the educational piece, and I know the councilwoman just addressed that. Wanted to just get your perspective on the strategy in terms of the city being obligated to provide funding with BSD. You indicated that it's been 7 years since we've increased. Is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Can you
No, it's
just
the
expand on
biggest
that?
increase in 7 years. There was I think a $1 million increase in 2012.
That was the last thing. Now, are we mandated or obligated to provide funding based on the current situation where the state has the school?
That's what we're in remediation over. It depends on the interpretation of the.
So is the responsibility of providing additional funding for education ride in the state versus the city? Or is that not clear?
The legal responsibility, I would say is not.
And that's where the mediation is, or the state law says that we must.
The state law is constructed in a way that, depending on who you ask, it could be interpreted differently. So the city's interpretation of our obligation is different than the state's interpretation of our obligation, which is why we're in mediation.
Does the commissioner or ride have any sort of crawback in terms of limiting funds going to the city, to the PPSD, in terms of for us not spending it or giving it to the PPSD?
There is part of the Crowley Act that can be interpreted to say that if the city doesn't meet its obligations, the commissioner has the right to withhold distressed communities funding. We've contended that that's not constitutional and have successfully argued against that previously. So again, this is part of what's being mediated and why we would love to see the Crowley Act revisited at the state level, because there are lots of challenges with it.
Once in terms of the education, I know we just the city's allocating 3 million. Was that done in a sense of what is needed, or is it going to specific programs? Obviously, we need more, but
It's done for PPSD to utilize as they see fit. I would say that one challenge we have is understanding how the PPSD budget is being spent, right? We don't really have a seat at the table in influencing how their money is spent. So we're providing for this money and relying on them to do what is right with the money. But I would, ask you all in partnership when they come before you to try to help us to understand further, how that money is being spent, because right now it is completely, overseen by the state and the local district officials, and the school board and the city don't really have anything to say.
yeah. And the reason why I ask is that obviously they have a deficit and they eliminating positions. And so when they come before us, we'd like to go into a little bit more deeper than that.
How those decisions are made, where the deficit comes from,
Yeah.
we see growth in some areas that we have questions about. And so all of those things I think need to be understood for us to help ensure that kids are getting what they need in the district.
Yeah, appreciate it. I agree. On the section of recreation, last year, being our first year, I saw an increase in summer learning, or at least summer jobs for young people. They were over 1,500 kids that applied. And I see that they're recommending level funding on that. Should we be increasing? I know that I personally heard from people with their kids not having those opportunities. Was there any thought in terms of increasing even more to those opportunities for summer learning and keeping kids busy during the summer?
Yeah, I think certainly it is always something that we would like to do more of. We are going to have less ARPA money next year, so there will be fewer summer jobs, even though the general revenue portion of it has been maintained. So it is, a question of choices and where we're making investments. We are looking at how to ensure that the jobs that we're providing in all areas of the city provide for a quality experience. So right now we have the summer jobs money that is the funding that goes to nonprofits. That's what this talks about. There's also all the kids that get hired to work in parks and recreation in the summer. Those jobs are also very meaningful. And so we're looking at how we can implement work readiness curriculum and other kinds of support so that the kids in those jobs are getting the same kind of experience the kids in the nonprofit jobs are getting.
Yeah.
And those together make up a whole program, but previously the city has already looked at this one.
I would really love to see a total number from last year.
Yeah, sure.
From
We'll make sure Stephen brings.
all that you just described.
Yeah.
The summer learning, the city jobs, just as a total, from different public entities. The other is in reference to, if you can just elaborate on the elimination, quote unquote, homestead exemption. I've gotten a couple of calls in reference, oh, they're eliminating my homestead.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on what is the difference? And does the homeowner arrive to the same tax exemption that they're receiving now?
Yeah.
If you could just
Absolutely,
explain that.
it is exactly the same. So the way someone's taxes in an owner occupied property are calculated now is by taking the non-owner occupied rate and multiplying it by the homestead exemption. And when you do that, you get 1046, which would be the new rate. So all it does is provide that rate instead of having to do that math. And bringing more transparency into what the rate is so that when people are comparing, they don't think that our rate is 1835, it's actually 1046.
Simple enough, yeah.
It's not, it's very confusing, and the city's gone back and forth several times, which I can't, probably Councilman Taylor will be able to tell me, and then secretly why it's gone back and forth a few times, but it's not clear why we bounced back and forth, because the math doesn't change. The exemption doesn't provide a benefit to anyone. It does require state legislation though, because the commercial rates and the owner occupied rates are tied in their ratio from one another. And so in order to do this, we need to change how they are tied, and that's what we're trying to do.
So in order, Chair,
Yes, please.
so in order for it to be in effect, legislation would have to be passed in this year's.
That's right.
And do we have a date in the sense of when we will get a confirmation of whether this is gonna be something that the state is gonna allow us to do?
It's been moving. I think this one has already had hearings, so I think we feel positively about it in the way that it's moving. And it's just a small change to the overall property tax law. So I don't think we have concerns with that.
Okay. And then, the last one is in terms of the, in the DPW, looking for assistant chief engineer and, engineering project manager.
Yeah.
I've gotten a couple of inquiries in terms of people that are actually doing the work out in the street. Just wanted to get more specific in terms of what the job descriptions are for these positions, because oftentimes some things are not getting done in the community. So I just wanted, if you could provide some of that.
Happy to do that.
Yeah. And then last one,
Yes.
on the telecommunication,
Mhm.
another position for to support quality assurance across the department, to improve responses, evaluate performance, and standardize calls, questions, and answers. Isn't there a manager that actually does that at this time, or why require an additional position? Is something failing there that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I'd like to let the director and his deputies speak to that. I think they are doing it now, but they are also managing crews of a workforce, and I think it would be important for them to talk about, you know, the amount of time they have to spend on this. The folks that do those are actually incredibly entry level jobs, perhaps surprisingly entry level jobs, who experience tremendous pressure and have to provide, have to be making split-second decisions that could have life and safety impacts. And so ensuring that those folks are developed and trained well is incredibly important. And I think they'll both make a very compelling case to you about that. So I'll make sure they're prepared for that, but I think it would be best for them to speak further.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sure, I have a quick question on the FY 2020 proposed revenue summary. Why is there an increase from fiscal year 24 to 25 on tangible tax of about 9.5 million?
So the,
6.
LNG tanks are coming on, have been reported as part of the most recent tangible reporting. From National Grid or I don't know, National Grid, thank you. And so that's an incredibly, like, that's a big new tangible asset that has come on us.
Okay, so that explains the 9.5 million increase. Okay. Great. More questions? That's the other thing I would ask is I know that we had a 5-year budget projection given to us at the end of December 19th, 2023. And I know we've been projecting projected deficits for the next 5 years. So I know we have an increase in our budget of only 3%. I understand our challenge is, weaning ourselves from the federal funding, but I'm just wondering if you have any comments at all on how we'll be addressing those deficits.
So I'll just start off by saying that our 5-year projections generally do project out deficits in the out years. It's really hard to know for maybe 3, 4, and 5 years. And also, when finance is preparing those projections, we're not making policy decisions. We are not making decisions on tax increases or programmatic changes, or we're not making cuts to make it balance, because that's not, we're not elected officials. We're kind of going with what we have. So, we have to file a balanced budget every year. So we've never not filed a balanced budget. As those out years come to us, we find replacement revenues or new sources of revenues.
Yes, Councilwoman Vanderbilt. Thank you. I have a final question. Just looking at the overall, like where all the, and I don't think it's the department specific question, but where all the revenue is projected to come from. I see $100,000 for sound camera revenue. I'm just wondering whose budget we're going to see that in. And my understanding is that it's still very much under discussion at the General Assembly. So banking on that since. The sound camera revenue, $100,000.
I believe that's the public safety. I think it's landed in the police budget.
Okay, and it's offset by all the costs that would be included by the.
That's right. Yeah.
The other question, yes, Councilman.
Going off, a question, the sound.
Sound camera.
The sound camera is for what exactly? It's for the cars, it's for the loud bars, what is it for?
It would issue violations for cars that are breaking the current sound limits.
Okay, I don't know, hasn't that kind of went down? I don't know. Other council, I think it seems like that's went down tremendously in a lot of areas. I don't know if it's the same all across the city. Well, I don't know.
Don't sit in the mayor's office.
Well, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, we're waiting for someone, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Is that it for Councilwoman Graves right now, or is Councilman Barb?
Thank you very much, Chair. Do we have any new fees on this coming budget?
We are not proposing new fees in this budget, but we have collected fines and fee data from all the departments as part of our own budget process. And the policy team is working now to look at how those fines and fees compare to other places like Providence, so that we can bring forward additional recommendations and make changes on those outside of the budget, but we haven't included any of those changes in this proposed budget. So you should expect to hear from us on that, but we did not include that here because they all require changes in ordinance, and it felt like it was going to be too complicated to try to pass the budget and those at the same time.
So you'll be coming back to us with an ordinance that addresses fees overall.
I think they're in different places.
Okay. Yes, sorry, just a minute, Councilman Vargas, Council President.
Just a point of information, Madam Chair. So I know, Councilman Vargas and several, I think Councilman Taylor and several councilors are super excited to dig on these, several different issues, right? Like related to the fee structures.
So there is one fee that we have budgeted, so let me correct myself, on municipal court technology. We are looking for the council to pass a change to allow us to incur a fee for municipal court to help offset the technology that we purchased.
Yes, Councilman Vargas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because I was asking the question about the fees because we having issues with the $50 fee per mattress.
Yeah.
It look like people they don't care about $50. They rather pay the $50 and leave the mattress on the sidewalk. And the other fee I was talking about is this new camera sound thing. What will be the fee or the violation? Do we have a number?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we'll make sure that when public safety is before you and they are here to talk about that they can provide that for you. It's in the state legislation, but I don't know what it is. Yes.
I'm going back to the sound thing too. I just can see people being stopped for sound because somebody's,
Loud music.
I don't want this to be an issue of pressure between the public and the police because they're feeling like only certain people are getting stopped, only certain areas and being, it's all
I should
happening.
clarify, there's no stop involved.
Okay.
It's like the red light camera, it is issued by mail to a.
Wonderful, okay, that sounds good.
Yes, Councilwoman Havertop.
Thank you. I have 3 more questions. No, I said I was done, but I don't. One is building off Councilwoman Graves, and this might again be a question for Colonel Perez, but I'll ask it here too, is how are we going to determine where those cameras go? Because if it's based on historical data or pullovers, I'd be worried that there's a racial discrimination element to where those get placed. So just
I
saying
think
that
it's
out of the box.
for determination. We've been looking at 311 data about where we see the most kinds of events related to noise, but certainly that would be need to be part of the implementation.
Okay. And just to say out loud that I think traffic safety is a larger safety concern, so the amount of money we'd be spending on sound cameras, I think we could offset with an additional traffic engineer to improve the physical safety on our roads. So just say that out loud, that that's something I'll be really concerned about. Which isn't a question, but a statement, so I do actually have 2 other questions. One is, are we expecting an increase from I know it's not a new finer fee, but we're getting all those new parking meters? Maybe I just go to because a lot of things in there. Are we expecting an increase in revenue from that?
We budgeted flat revenue over last year, but we're about $1.5 million behind over last year, so it is not actually
It's
flat.
not actually flat. And then in his budget address, the mayor mentioned a lot about climate change. With that section, should we expect to see that it's like sustainability is pretty flat? Well, is it across the board or where?
So certainly the team working on sewer is mitigating climate change. I think the rest you'll see in the capital improvement plan budget would be investments in sewer and other stormwater infrastructure and more to come.
Okay, yes, Councilman Vargas.
Thank you, Chair. And I also hear that the mayor is working on it to buy a lot of more EV cars. He's planning to buy the cars first and then put the EV chargers, or put in the EV chargers first and then buy the cars?
So I'm not sure we're planning on buying a lot of EV cars right now. You'll see them on the master lease list. You'll see the cars we're planning to buy. I don't remember off the top of my head how many EVs are there. We are looking for other funding sources, federally available funding. First on infrastructure and charging, if we can find it. And then certainly thinking about how we can continue to make more EVs available, either through other kinds of leasing mechanisms or through other funding sources. We are also training staff. I think this month we have a number of city mechanics. One of our limiting factors has been that our mechanics don't know how to fix them. So we're sending the mechanics out to get trained to fix EVs that will hopefully better prepare us to be able to maintain them.
Any follow, Councilman?
I might apply for that position.
Thank you very much for letting us know that. Okay, pro temp.
Yes, in terms of the advocacy and waiting on the 5.7 million
Yeah.
from the state, you said that it may have an impact on our budget if we don't get it. Does that impact if we don't get it? Would it have any impact on the additional funding for PPSC?
We'll have to cut 5.7 million out of this budget, so I don't want to speculate where that would come from, but I can tell you, as being part of the, as knowing this budget very well, there aren't many places to cut it. So we would, everything would be on the table, and certainly the PPSD increase would be something we'd have to look at. Which we've been transparent with folks about.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know, but that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions right now? Of course, we're gonna be digging into all the departmental budgets. And I'm sure that, if we have any other general questions.
One other general note that I didn't speak to is ARPA. We are, we have a most recent reconciliation of how the ARPA spending is going, which if it hasn't been transmitted to you, will be transmitted to you any minute. I'll tell you a preview. I think we're in a very good position. But it is we're almost definite we're gonna have to come back and look at that ordinance one more time. Because there's like money in the couch cushions that we're gonna have to make a final decision about how it gets allocated. So in the coming months, we'll continue to refine those projections, and then we'll be back before you to say there's X amount left and with a recommendation for how that money should be spent. And that will close out our bill entirely.
And is it your recommendation certainly that we do that soon? Here it's soon, do we need to know that before we finish our budget discussion?
No, because it won't impact.
And when you say couch cushion money, can we have just a little bit more of a descriptor?
Well, it a little bit depends on I would imagine it's less than 10.
Okay.
I would imagine it's in the single digit numbers, and how high or low will depend a little bit on how much of the council allocation is spent.
Okay, well, I appreciate you because that was something that we had discussed, having you come back.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that, but we're very eager to hear how much couch cushion money we might earn and where that might be allocated. Everything is couch cushion money, so thank you. All right. Yes, Proton.
I just want to say that I see a great improvement on the financial book.
Crystal.
Whoever did this, it's much presentable and you follow it much more better and good for the eyes.
You see her on Thursday.
Who's that?
Crystal Lindbergh.
All right.
The budget director is at the State House advocating for our bills right now, but she did this all on her own accord and was like many nights making it work. So it's and it's all online like this. If you look online, you will see the budget as it's presented before you.
Excellent, thank you. Please give her our, at least mine.
Make sure you get.
The general.
Right.
It's a great. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you very much. We're happy to kick off budget season and thank you for your presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, would like to have a motion to continue items 1 through 4.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Canterbury, seconded by Councilor Brady. All in favor? All opposed? And with that, I think our business is finished this evening. We have a motion to adjourn. Made by Councilor, seconded by Councilor Taylor. All in favor? Hold on.
Somebody else could have closed it, like, chat one, yeah. No, we don't have to go home tonight, I guess.
No.